A car bomb exploded outside police headquarters.
He's been shot 3 times in the head and body.
Thank God for the jury system. That's all I can say.
The end of a life of extreme violence.
Everywhere you look in this city, just below the surface, there's a hidden world, a dark history of organised crime.
If there is a God, I'm sorry.
My name is John Silvester. Some people call me Sly of the Underworld. I've been reporting on crime in Melbourne since 1978. When my children were little, I would drive around Melbourne and point out where certain crimes had been committed. They were bored witless. Now I'm doing it for the age. Over there, somebody got murdered, and over there, somebody got stabbed. You see the spots, the laneways where people have been shot, the places where deals were made. I reckon most people walking around that area now wouldn't even know. And when I started, pubs closed at 10. Melbourne certainly wasn't a 24-hour city like it is now. Things change, but things don't, of course. We've got tobacco wars and fires and underworld fights and strange links between police and crooks. The Queen Victoria Market is now a tourist hotspot with trendy cafes, arts and crafts, but it was once the site of a bloody mafia power struggle. It really began in 1962 with the death of the Melbourne godfather, Domenico the Pope Italiano. This left a power vacuum in the mafia. A struggle ensued between rival families for control of the market. The conflict became so bloody that the Victorian government invited an expert on Italian organised crime to assist the police. His name was John T. Cusack. He worked for the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in the United States. What he saw happening at the markets prompted him to write a 17-page report detailing the existence of what became known as the Honoured Society, which is Australia's mafia. Cusack warned that if action was not taken, the mafia's grip on Melbourne would grow, mutating from standover tactics that were used at the markets to control of unions, import and export businesses, and a monopoly on nightclubs, booking agencies and building companies. With Cusack, they brought out an Italian expert and he said, "Get me some people from the market." So he got them and he lined them up and he said to the first one, "Tell me what's going on." I said, "I can't help you." So he went bang, punched him. Went up to the second bloke, said, "Tell me what's going on." Can't help it. So he hit him with a chair. And even in those days, the Victoria Police said, "You might be going a bit far." And he said, "Well, if I can't make them all frightened of me than of them, I may as well go home." So this all settled down in 1964 when Liborio Benvenuto became the godfather. And somebody tried to blow up Benvenuto's car. And he was a small man with a pork pie hat. And he said, "I don't know why this would happen because I only have friends at the market." A year later, 2 Italians were found dead in the Murrumbidgee River. Nobody tried to blow up Benvenuto's car again. So there's always that undercurrent. But it was Cusack who was the first to actually say, you do have organised crime. The warnings in the report were considered alarmist at the time and were ignored by successive governments. For many years it remained secret, and over the last 25 years, one by one of Cusack's predictions have come true.
There are a fair number of reasonably proficient criminals in this country. I've met a few in my time, and I'm more inclined to think it would be Australians.
10 years after the Cusack report, Melbourne's underworld was rocked by what would become one of the city's most notorious heists. And it was proof that Melbourne's gangsters were not just fruit shop owners. It was the great bookie robbery.
What sort of people pulled off this great bookies robbery? Mobsters? Almost certainly.
Before there was a TAB on every corner, gambling was handled by bookies. The headquarters for these bookies and where they would settle their takings was a place called the Victoria Club on Queen Street. It's now the Turf Sports Bar. Now we're in Queen Street, and up here on the left is where the Victoria Club was. So that place there, which is now called the Turf Bar, that's where it is, the scene of the great bookie robbery, which It was in April 76. 6 gunmen went in and they took 118 calico bags full of cash. And they were so smart. They had an office upstairs where they dumped the money and they'd left the weapons right where they were. That meant they couldn't be nailed to it was pre-DNA, couldn't be nailed with that, and they weren't going to be used in any other job. We're talking a time of the cash economy. So there was an armed robbery every day, but there were 2 or 3 gangs that were like military trained. They were normally had an inside person, and when they hit big time. So it was payrolls, the bookie robbery. This was massive money.
I think they'd be pretty well-educated crims. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the Melbourne criminals probably lead all the other state criminals by a long way.
Senior police at the time described the heist as the best organised and executed in Australia's history. Just 3 years later, in 1979, the gang's ringleader, Ray Chuck, would be shot dead at Melbourne's courthouse, now the RMIT University.
Raymond Chuck Bennett was shot down by an unknown gunman as he was escorted through the city court for armed robbery charges. It was believed his murder was carried out by a contract killer.
This is the courtyard. In November 1979, Ray Chuck was facing an armed robbery charge of $69,000. And he had been the general for the great bookie robbery. And sitting upstairs waiting for him was the standover man, Brian Kane. Police brought him up and he was going up into one of the courts upstairs, and Brian Kane was wearing a suit, stood up, snub-nosed revolver and shot him. And Ray Chuck ran and was collapsing with fatal wounds, but the police chased him, believing he was trying to escape. And Brian Kane was able to make his getaway. Now, already you've seen what a sort of rat's nest of a place this is. You get lost in a moment. Yet he knew exactly where to go to get out. There's no way he could have known how to get out and get through that without inside knowledge. And the reason he wanted to kill Ray Chuck is Brian and his brother Les were after the bookie robbery money. Ray Chuck believed Les particularly was dangerous, so decided on a preemptive strike, and in 79 he went to Les's Wanturna house and shot him dead, took his car, and his body was never found.
Kane was shot dead at his Wanturna house in an Underworld-style execution.
Brian Kane said to one of the barristers, I'm going to get that Ray Chuck and I'm going to cut his head off. So he vowed to get him, and that's where it happened. The murder of Chuck was an inside job. There's no way Brian Kane could have known exactly where to go unless he'd been there before. Kane's lifestyle eventually caught up with him. He was gunned down inside the Quarry Hotel in Brunswick in 1982.
Detectives say they have very few clues as to the identity of the gunman. Today they are questioning associates of Brian Kane, a man who had a long criminal record. But police do say they believe that Kane's murder was a gangland execution, part of an ongoing underworld feud that had already claimed several lives.
The inside knowledge of the hit on Ray Chuck gives us a small window into the corruption that had taken hold inside Victoria Police Force, which at the time was headquartered opposite the courthouse on Russell Street. On March 27, 1986, the Russell Street headquarters, now apartments, was the scene of a terrorist attack.
Not yet the streets of Beirut, but a big step closer to the madness. That madness that we thought lurked only beyond our shores.
That day at 1 p.m, a car bomb hidden in a stolen 1979 Holden Commodore ripped through the building. The blast seriously injured Police Constable Angela Rose Taylor, who later died of her injuries. She was the first Australian policewoman to be killed in the line of duty. She was only 21 years old.
Why indeed, oh why?
Angela Taylor worked in a watch house, and this just tells you about life. It was a toss of the coin, who would go and get lunch, and she lost. So she was walking because the police cafeteria was around the corner. So she walked across here when the bomb went off. And Bernie, the attorney Barmer, was a clerk of courts here, and he went out there and he tried to comfort her, although he could see that she was fatally wounded. And Bernie's a lovely bloke, but he will say, even now, if he hears a bang, he'll hit the floor. A Russell Street bombing was sort of when terrorism came to Victoria. I mean, part of the bomb car was found 2 blocks away. It was a miracle that only one person was killed. During the 1980s, Melbourne's underbelly was fed on a diet of drugs and standover work. Melbourne's inner north, now awash with trendy bars and cafes, was a different world back then. In fact, one of the north's most popular wine bars, Neighbourhood Wine, was once one of Melbourne's busiest gangster hangouts, Alphonse Gangitano's illegal casino, the Sunset Club. So it's now a really groovy place, the Neighbourhood Wine Bar. But I was brought here by Johnny Zollo, known as Johnny Guitar, who was the partner of Alphonse in this business deal. And when I came here, there was crime scene tape across this door, and there was a seriously fortified door that the coppers broke down, so it was all smashed. And we went up here, and Alphonse had made it absolutely schmick.
So we opened in 2013. Yeah. And it sat empty from then back to when it was the casino, basically. When we took it, it was all original. Sort of came in, all the timber panelling, everything on the walls as is now. There was maroon carpet throughout the place that we took up and polished the floorboards underneath. And there was all they still had all the old tables and chairs in here, and you took the tops off and they were felt underneath with all the chips and all the rest. Realistically, the restaurants downstairs had just been using it as a storeroom for, I don't know, 20 odd years at that time, yeah. So.
And you said when you put the electricity back on?
Yeah, so power, we actually found to the top of the stairs here still. It's actually the timber panel in underneath the door over here opens up. The timber panel down the bottom over there also opens up, and there's a safe room, because this used to be the money office. Yeah, but when we took it, we also found AGMs for the illegal casino. Like, they were fairly organised. You know, there was all typed out notes of the meeting that took place and, you know, what they were proposing to do. And there was bags of poker, like sort of, I think you call them, like they were for the illegal one-armed bandit type things, poker machines being in the country, the ones that have been smuggled in. But they didn't actually take coins. They took these little metal discs that had a hole in it. So there was bags of those here and all of that. So,
a great history. And the place is fantastic. It looks like business is booming.
Yeah, it's good.
We'll come back for a reunion. So
thanks, mate. You too, John. No worries, guys.
This is the initial information report, which alleges that Gangitano and some others are going to set up a illegal casino at this specific address. So the police waited, and then they raided, and they questioned everybody who was here. So here, you know, why are you here? Play snooker, get something to eat. Lou Cozzo, Franco Cozzo's son, John William Samuel Higgs, who became a major drug trafficker. So it was a bit of a who's who ended up at the Gentleman's Club. Would certainly be getting stars on my good food guide. Gangitano was known as the Black Prince of Lygon Street, immortalised by Vince Colosimo in the series Underbelly. One of Melbourne's most notorious gangsters, Gangitano eventually met his end in 1998, shot by rival gangster Jason Moran.
Neighbours today expressed reservations about the Gangitanos, who moved in late last year.
You sort of could tell that they were a bit dodgy. If someone said, if someone was going to be killed in the street, which house would it happen in, I'd probably say that one there.
His murder was one of many, which became known as the Melbourne Underbelly War. It really kicked off in October 1999 when Carl Williams was shot in the stomach by Jason Moran. Williams demanded revenge, and dozens of gangsters would die. The first time Carl contacted me, I'd written a story that this war began in October 1999 when a 29-year-old, who was Carl, had been shot in the guts. And he rang me and he just said, you can get someone killed right and that sort of stuff. And that wasn't a threat. It was basically saying, that's exactly what happened, that if people think I'm talking to you, I could get shot. And that's where we had a relationship of sort until it fell over. He didn't like a story. I wrote a two-piece story and he didn't like the first part and said, I want to see you, which was amazing because that night he'd organised the murder of Graham Kinnebrew, which meant I'm having coffee with a bloke I know who's ordered the murder, which made a pretty good page one story to have what Carl had to say, but he came to see me, which was lovely, except sadly he was in a pair of bloody shorts and a singlet, which was hardly the Xenia suit. The most notorious gangland hangout at the time in Melbourne was Lygon Street in Carlton. In the city's most recognisable home of Italian food, just bubbling under the surface, it was once a gangster's paradise. For decades, crooks have gathered on Lygon Street to eat, socialise and plan their crimes. Oh, Lygon Street was always a meeting place. The next generation of Italian gangsters. Basically, we're seeing history again because it was about supply and demand. Organised crime is basically the fact that where there is a demand, there will be a supply. Well, now it's a matter of illicit tobacco. The government is making a fortune out of legitimate cigarettes. They're too expensive, so people go to the black market. So nothing changes.
Australian Federal Police have identified 5,000 members of the mafia in Australia in a major crime breakthrough.
The gangland wars in Melbourne means funerals are all too common in the city's underworld, and many of them take place here. St Mary Star of the Sea, a Roman Catholic church in West Melbourne. You can still find photos from the market murder time. So Dominic Italiano, his funeral was held here, but if you look at the pallbearers, many of those became clear mafia identities. Some of the market murder victims were also farewelled here. Then we move on. Alphonse John Gangitano had his funeral here, and it was said that he was murdered by Jason Moran, and Jason Moran's funeral was here. So there's a sort of sad symmetry to it all, but when you see the photos, the difference in the crowd, the very dark suits, the ties of from the market murder days to the bling that came later. In some of the gangland funerals, there were certain people who would, there was this sort of thing that the media should nick off, but there were any amount of people who would strut in front of their cameras desperate to be on the news. One of the funerals, there was a picture which Andy Rule and myself used on the book Leadbelly, which became the precursor to Underbelly, and one of those blokes rang me. And he had a gravelly voice and he said, you put me on the cover of your book. I thought, we're in trouble here. I said, yeah, so what? And he said, well, I'm actually a part-time actor and I think I'd be really good on Underbelly. I said, I think you would be too. And he didn't get the job. So it's a classic old church and all the people walking past wouldn't know its real history. There's crimes in every major city, but in Melbourne it seems to be woven into the fabric of the place. Just about every suburb holds a secret history, a hidden underbelly of crime that most Melbournians wouldn't know. But I see it everywhere you look. For more Melbourne crime stories, listen to my podcast, Naked City, wherever you get your podcasts.